Hey Nick, hey listeners.
Hello, Warwick. Hello, listeners.
What's
You
going on,
waiting?
Coxie? I'm waiting with bated breath.
I don't recall if we've spoken about crab bait on the podcast before.
I don't think we have spoken about crab bait on the podcast.
We probably need to share that story. But before we share the story, I'm going to share a joke. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Actually, I don't think I am, but tell it anyway.
What is the difference between a cat that took a nap on the Xerox machine and a cat that imitates everything you do?
Okay, I can just about tell where this is going, but in the interest of time, go.
One is a cat copy and the other one is a copycat.
I got the copycat for the second one. I'm thinking cat scan for the first one. That doesn't
Oh,
make any
cat scan would have
sense.
been a good one, actually.
Well, that's the old joke about taking your dog to the vet about something and the bill was $3,000. Like, what? All you did was wave this cat over my dog. Yeah, well, that was a cat scan. Anyway.
Scans are expensive. They're more
Oh
expensive
my,
for animals than humans. We're very lucky to have some sense of a health system.
that's why I don't bother going and getting scans done on my dicky knee and my sore neck and all that, because, it's three, four, $500 unless you're funded by the government, which is the taxpayers.
I'm heading off to have my hip scanned. That makes me sound like 500 years old. It makes me feel 500 years old when it wakes me up every night. I had a good laugh with my GP this morning about the tendency for bursitis at my age. Yay.
Yay. Yeah, collect the whole set.
Why do I have to be the same as everyone else?
I must admit, I allowed myself to feel old this morning, Nick. For those of you listening that don't know, I have decided to have another crack with the whole family thing. So I'm 51 and I have an 11-month-old son. I feel like I should go to a support group. That sounds like an AA meeting. Hi, my name's Warwick. I'm 51. I have an 11-month-old. Oh, welcome, Warwick. But he's cutting more teeth at the moment, which is awesome. And he's an awesome little dude. But when he wakes up 3 times through the night and my alarm goes off at 5 o'clock so I can go to the gym and do all my cool stuff as a, middle-aged man that gets in ice water and all that stuff, I sat on the edge of the bed this morning, Nick, and I groaned and I felt very, very old and very tired.
It's amazing how it creeps up on you and surprises you every now and then. Like, it's probably not until birthdays that I stop and think about my age or
Mm.
my kids. My kids often give me a hard time about my age, but their father is like 7 or 8 years older than me. I can't even remember anymore. It's been so long. So my quip back is always, yeah, but I'm not as old as your father. So, and I don't pay them any attention, don't think about it. And then I have a birthday creep up and it's like, shit, when did that
Mm.
happen?
Mm. Time just slips on by, doesn't it?
Really does, especially for your children. What I'm finding still really shocking is how quickly the children grow. And there are blanks of time that are really hard and feel really, really long, typically when they're really little or when they're going through those challenging teenage times. And then there are other periods of times where got caught up with an old client yesterday, as you know, and she was asking about the ages of my children. I'm like, oh, well, 28 and 22. And then I've got a bonus three that are 23 and 21 and 20. It's like, how on earth did they get to be that age? When did that happen?
The passage of time.
How can I be the mother of a 28-year-old person? How?
Are you saying you're not mature enough to be the mother of a 28-year-old person? They seem like a pretty reasonable human being, though.
Well, that's a compliment. Thank you. I'll take that.
I'm yet to get to that stage. I can't claim any like good parenting status yet. My daughter from my, it's not my first marriage, but anyway, my daughter from my previous marriage, uh, she's about to turn 13. Actually, no, I can claim some good parenting there, Coxie.
I think you
She's
can.
she's well adjusted. She's polite and compassionate and
Good kid.
kind, and she does pretty well at school and doesn't get into any strife. Uh, so yeah, maybe I have some little part to play there, even if it is only genetics.
Isn't it funny how we discount what we do? we tend to focus on the negative rather than the positive. So rather than, it's kind of the first go-to of, I used to say it all the time. Well, I got my girls to 21 and they're not pregnant. I'm a successful mum. That's the shittest thing to say or feel. But I did. I was excited and I had very good children. But that's not necessarily a positive. It's like a double negative.
Yeah. And who
And
says that starting your family when you're 20 is actually a negative reflection on either you as the parent or your daughter as the person in that boat? I mean, that was the norm
yeah.
50, 70 years ago.
Yeah, I might have had one at 20, but yes, maybe that's
Wasn't
where my
uncommon.
reflection comes from.
Well, yeah. But you perceive it as a negative thing?
Well, no, I actually had a similar conversation about this last night. I never regret my children. I don't think anybody ever would. And I actually love being a young mum. I love the energy I've had to have with my children. This almost feels like it's a swipe at you. I'm sorry. It's really not.
Oh, I'm about to cut myself up into little tiny pieces after you're finished.
I did really enjoy being a young mum. And I remember particularly my daughter, who's the elder one of the 28-year-old, would come home from school and she'd be like, Mum, all the other mums are insert age here. I'm now not going to say it. And they're so boring and they're not fun like you. And they all wear these clothes and blah, blah, blah. So I think there was some benefit to it. And I also feel as though I had to consciously decide to continue to live my life. We're going to get really deep here for a minute. I'm the third in the line of having their firstborn at 20. My mum did the same. My grandmother did the same. And not all of us have made conscious decisions to continue to live our lives. And I think that was a big thing, having a kid, you've got a choice. Either you continue to live and grow and learn, or you get to a point in their lives and you then make that decision to grow and learn. And that's not always the best outcome for you or the child. I didn't want to repeat some of the stuff I had seen in my family. And so made a conscious decision to continue to grow and learn, which meant that, no, I don't regret it. And yes, it was very, very hard. It was very hard to have children without being very financially secure. It clearly didn't work out with their father and I. So that was very hard. That's been very hard for the kids. But that doesn't mean that it was the wrong choice, or I have really well-adjusted kids who have grown into amazing people that contribute well, and have dealt with a lot of their stuff. So I don't know. I guess life just takes you down the path it's going to take you down to some extent.
Yeah. And, I guess this is an episode where you and I are sharing a bit more about ourselves for our listeners. And, if you want to get to know us a little more, then this is your opportunity, I guess, if you're listening to this. And also, I think it's important as far as our roles in life, whether that's as a parent or a business owner or a community member, or a spouse or a partner, that we're not just mindless or non-conscious about our impact on others. There's that saying, what other people think of me is none of my business, and that gets chucked around a lot by coaches and mentors especially. And I heard an interesting twist on that recently on one of our episodes, Nick, with a guest that we had. And sure, what other people think of me is none of my business, but it still matters. It matters what other people think of me, because if everyone thinks I'm an asshole, then that's feedback that, if the overwhelming majority of the survey says Waz is an asshole, then I have an opportunity to look at that and go, oh, is it really going to help me in life? Is that going to impact my family if everyone thinks I'm a dick? Maybe I want to change that a little bit, and not to make other people happy or to seek external validation, which we've also talked about here on the podcast. But in terms of, well, am I giving my best in this life? And as we record this, yesterday would have been my dad's birthday. He's been gone now for 4 years. And a bit like your comments about the age thing, how did your kids get to be that old? I was just pondering yesterday. It's like, now, how old would Dad have been? Oh, holy shit! He would have been 82. Geez, I know what the age gap is between Dad and I, and now I feel old again. And then my boy wakes up 3 times in the night. And it's like, I'm too old for this shit, which is a dumb thing to say because I'm telling myself that I can't do it.
Yeah.
And so the flip side of what you're talking about with your kids, Nick, and I think the opportunity that a lot of us the opportunities that a lot of us don't realize or recognize that are in front of us is I can continue on with that thought process of, I'm 51, I've got a baby. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? This is ridiculous. And, we've got two businesses in the house and it's insanity. But the reality is, I'm actually being more fun and doing more silly stuff because of my boy and having a better time at times where it would be easy for me to sit on the couch and turn on some mountain bike videos and just go, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. But instead, I'm running around playing with toys and actually, in some sense, forcing myself to be a little bit younger in my thinking. That's a huge benefit to me. And obviously, I want my son to have fun with his dad and not
Mm.
see me tired and grumpy and distracted and on my bloody phone checking emails and all that sort of stuff that it's just so easy to slip into. So
Mm.
it's a fantastic opportunity. And I think, thank goodness for my boy, because, it'd be easy for me to slip into middle age and go, I got the house and I got the toys and, I've got a business and I can just kind of stay comfortable, which we've talked about a bit in the past as well. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity at either end of the fence. You had to,
Mm.
well, you chose to overcome some of that stuff,
Mhm.
being a younger mum, and me as a really freaking old dad has the opportunity to choose the positive rather than the negative.
I'm just going to buy a puppy and be silly for my puppy because I kind of feel like I've got a couple of months of it carrying on and then I don't need to worry about it for 40 years after that.
And it's only, 10 or 15 years of responsibility, not the rest of your life
Forever.
kind of thing.
Yeah. I think we all have the opportunity to flip any situation on its head. I've been through, I have no doubt all our listeners have, I know
Mm,
you have, been through some pretty big things. And if you want to look for it, and everyone there's a learning or there's a message or there's something that you can create a positive out of
mm,
rather than being stuck. The other thing that I've had to work really hard on is ensuring that things aren't happening to me.
mm-hmm.
Is understanding that I've chosen for that, even the worst things. And I don't know, one day in 10 years' time, I'm sure I'll be able to talk about it without feeling like I want to jump off the edge of the roof or something. But um, I've chosen those things, whether I like it or not. I've been directly responsible in some format for what has happened around me, with me, and to me. And I think that if we look for those lessons, then it doesn't have to be as painful as it might be in the moment because
Still
everything
pretty
carries.
painful though, isn't it, Nick?
Oh, I'm not dismissing that it doesn't hurt. It's just that that doesn't need to be my focus. I can focus on the positive in it, which I'm listening to myself talk and think, God, I sound like a wanker. I sound like a proper coach at this point in time. And when you're going through stuff, it can be really hard to see that there might actually be a positive. Your kids are sick or your partner's sick or your business is up the shit. It's very hard to see there may be a positive in that. Often it's not until reflection that you realize there was, oh, that's what I've been through that for, or that was the advantage of going through that.
Usually in hindsight.
100%. When you get as practiced as going through shit as I have become over the years, you can learn to train your thinking to find the thing you would normally see in hindsight. It'll be right there in front of you. And when you can focus on that instead of focusing on the shitstorm that's going on around you, it can be just that little less painful, a little less hard to navigate your way through. I feel that's my experience.
I want to pull on a couple of things that you said there, Nick, and not because I'm your therapist, because you wouldn't be paying me if that was the case. Uh, I'll pull on the first one. So, you said as you listen to yourself, it's like, oh God, I sound like a wanker, bloody coach. And I hear you say that, and I think it's an interesting thing that happens for us, particularly as Australians, but I think as Westerners, but mostly Australians, when people like us, wow, that sounds weird. People like us, people like you, um, are out there aiming to make a difference to those of you listening to this. And And I guess, from a perspective of care and compassion for humans, for other people, yeah, sure, we run a business, we make money out of working with our clients. And this sounds a bit self-serving. We often get told by our clients or people that even don't become clients, but just chat to us about the potential of joining our program.
Mm,
The reason they talk to us is because they get a sense that we actually give a shit. It's not just a business. And
mm,
I'm sure there's people out there coaching and mentoring where it sounds like it's just a business, but they really do care. They just haven't
mm.
managed to show that in what they do, unfortunately for them. Um, and so that whole thing and I do the same, Nick. So this is not just pointing the finger at you. It's like, oh my gosh, I sound like a bloody typical frigging coach, saying, oh, well, I've had all this hardship and there's always a positive in there, mate. So let's help you find it. It's like, oh my gosh, Waz, what are you doing? But that in itself is just BS negative stories that I've been infected with over the years from, family members, people I've worked with, co-workers, whatever, that says if you're trying to help someone, you're a wanker. Um, and so yeah, I don't want to turn this into a Nick. You shouldn't do that because I know we're going to stop recording here and probably have a deeper conversation. Me bringing this up on the podcast,
I don't mind.
but I'm also thinking about our listeners. There might be some of you out there who are trying to get ahead, and there's people around you doing that same thing, going, "Oh, are you right, mate? Like, what's with all this positive shit? Life sucks. Why can't you just wallow around in it with us?" And I think sometimes it's hard to actually get out of those negative loops because it feels silly and it actually feels normal to be in a negative loop and do what I did with you this morning when we jumped on for a quick catch up before we recorded. I start whinging about stuff and complaining about things. And I hear myself do that. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to
I,
be that person.
I actually think that's a really great thread. I think there's a point of difference though. I think it's healthy for us all to vent or just express what we're feeling in that moment. It's healthier again if you can get to the end of that expression and realize, oh, that was just a vent and now I move on. And you go back to looking for the lesson or the positive in that rather than getting stuck in it. I think when we get stuck, and no shade to anyone that gets stuck, I've been stuck many, many times. The problem with being stuck is it's very hard to get out of being stuck. And we tend to rely on external forces to get us unstuck.
Yeah.
I think one of the big keys to adult life is learning how to get unstuck. Actually, it's in life in general. Think about, I use examples all the time about teaching your kids how to ride a bike
Mm.
and how our job as parents is actually to get out of the way, let them fall over a couple of times because that's the only way they will actually learn. If we forever run around them with the training wheels on or as our helicopter parents would like to do, holding on to them, they don't actually get to learn how to ride. Well, I feel like in childhood, it's a bit the same. We have to let the kids safely fail so they can build that. I don't like the word resilience anymore. I think it's thrown around too much, but perhaps it's strength or fortitude to face another challenge.
Mm.
I think it's the same in this situation. If somebody's always helping me out of my stuckness, so I have a rant because I've got some pretty funky shit going on in my life at the moment. I could be very stuck in that. And has been at times tempting not to show up, not to come and do what we do, not to find the positive in what's going on. And if I stick in that space and rely on someone else to help me out of that space, it can be very difficult. Never is a big word. It can be very challenging then to ever develop a skill set to be able to pull myself back out of that space.
Mm.
But for me, I think it's healthy to have those rants. I think it's healthy to have someone you can trust and rely on to just listen to where you're at in the moment and not feel compelled to fix it. That's something you do very well, which is hard for boys, I've learned.
Mm.
But just to give that space and the time, because in that rant, you've managed to let it go. By the end of your frustration this morning, you'd let it go. You'd come back to the positive or how gosh darn cute he is and how difficult it must be for him. And aren't we doing great? And he sleeps so well. And I'm so lucky. You said all of these words this morning.
Mm.
And so you've pulled yourself back out to that point where it's like, okay, I'm ready to go on with my day. But if you don't get the rant or the vent or the frustration out, you're carrying that around until you have the opportunity to do so. It's very
Yeah, it
hard to
becomes
process that.
internalized.
Yeah.
And if you keep it internal, and I'm speaking to you listening to this, if you keep your stuff internal, then it actually is really hard to process it and move on from it. Actually, there's some cool stuff. And, we chatted with Maggie Dent on the podcast a little while ago, and we've had some fantastic feedback about that episode. And there's, Maggie's one of quite a few authors and speakers on that whole topic of raising our kids. But particularly, with boys and like tradie men, we're just boys. I don't have any tickets, but I love doing stuff with my hands. I'm a boy, and men and boys process emotion by going and doing stuff. Jumping on the motorbike and cutting some laps in the paddock, or hitting a tennis ball or a golf ball, whatever the heck it is, right? Climbing a tree. And so not doing those things because we're too busy and we don't have the time for it means that the feelings we're feeling stay inside and they don't get processed and they actually just accumulate. And you end up with a massive blockage, and you can't just call a plumber to fix that one. So I think for the ladies as well, if they don't have the forum to be able to talk through stuff, which is more the feminine approach, is actually expressing and sharing and processing through that verbalization of what's going on. Same thing happens. It gets internalized, and there's so many people running around out there with all this shit just blocking them up because they're not processing it on a regular basis. So I think it's a great point, Nick, and I'm taking that as permission to whinge to you every single day.
You are more than allowed to. I
think.
I was actually thinking as you were talking through that this is not something you and I do. So I really want to preface it. Not that anyone in our families ever listened to you and I on the podcast anyway.
Thank goodness.
Sometimes it's venting to someone about something they've done isn't the healthiest thing. Sometimes there's an opportunity to vent to another safe person about a situation you find yourself in, because part of the process of venting is cementing the way you think or feel. And often when we verbalize something, it's like, oh, I am being really unreasonable here. I'm so glad I told this person instead of telling the person that I thought needed to know. And so I actually think it's super healthy, whether it's that way or by processing, like you say, as most fellas do with their hands in one form or another. The venting in some form is extremely important for you to be able to process and move forward. Sometimes it can prevent some really yucky situations that don't actually need to happen. It's just because you haven't given yourself enough space and time to process what you went through to understand whether there really was, whether it was just a trigger or a reaction, or there was a really an actual problem that needed to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tie all this to what is going to sound like a shameless plug, listeners. And look, we talk a lot on the podcast about what we do for money. And you know what? Nick, I am still, after 16 years of coaching, bending my brain to how can I talk to people about the fact that, yes, I'm going to charge you money because that's the world we live in. And I'm doing this because I want something different for those people who want something different. It's not because I think you should change or I think what you're doing is shit. It's that you've said you want something different. And I'm sitting here going, holy crap, I can help you with that.
Yeah.
So what I'm about to say, whatever your thoughts are, is because we had a comment made by one of our clients about our community and that sharing aspect that is part of our tradiepreneur community in our paid program. And this client really highlighted it for me when they said it's one of their absolute favorite things about our tradiepreneur community is that ability to share without feeling a sense of judgment within our community. And we're talking about, tens of trade businesses, like it's not 2 or 3 people, talking about a fairly big group of people here. And so we consistently get this feedback that people can show up, share their stuff and feel like, oh, wow, no one's judging me about my choices or anything. They're just listening with that, hey, tell us what's going on. And so it creates that opportunity, Nick, as you're saying, to speak out what we're feeling, hear it, and then go, oh, I'm kind of being a bit of a prima donna about that.
Yeah.
Or, no, this is legitimate. I
Yeah.
think I have a legitimate issue here and I should probably do something about that. It's that opportunity to hear ourselves instead of it just bouncing around inside our brain like the monkey flinging poo around inside the zoo.
It always sticks to itself, doesn't it?
Oh, now I was just going to move on, but if you want to encourage me to be a 14-year-old boy and make
No,
poo jokes.
you need no encouragement.
All
None whatsoever.
right. So this was a bit of a meandering episode, Nick.
Well, I feel like we haven't done one of these. We used to do it our Flip It Fridays every
mm,
Friday.
mm.
For our listeners to get to know us a little bit more, maybe more than we want to share. Many times I've gotten off these episodes and thought, why did I say that?
Yeah,
That's not
yeah.
something I wanted to share. Anyway, I don't think it hurts. We are just who we are. Exactly who you hear on here is who we are in real life. It still surprises me that there's a forum like this where you can just be yourself and people listen to you. It's phenomenal.
Mm,
Just
mm.
phenomenal.
My dad would have loved podcasting. He could talk me times 1,000. My dad, and man, he had an opinion on everything.
I had the privilege of meeting your dad once, and he was very shy on that particular day. I think he was a bit overwhelmed by all the people, but he was pretty shy. He didn't have much to say, and I don't know that he knew how to take this blonde-headed, loud, direct lady that was coming at him to say g'day and try and get to know him.
Which is hilarious because, and when you met my dad, he was, that was sort of, he was unwell and that was his last years with us. But he was the bloke that would talk to everybody about everything. And we get home from being places and he would know all about someone's intimate relationship and what's going on with their bank account and all sorts of stuff. It's like, Dad, no. Well, like, what? Don't ask people about that stuff. They don't want to talk to you about that.
Maybe they just enjoy sharing with someone.
Oh, I don't know. They'd say, "Oh, he's so lovely." I'm like, "Oh, you should live with him." And now that he's gone, I'm like, I really miss my dad.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's really funny when those things
Yeah.
are taken away.
Anyway, so I certainly hope that you listening to this have taken something from Nick and my sharing, and just a bit of shooting the shit. And if you are feeling like you've got some stuff to process, it's buried down deep about your business, or honestly, even about your relationship, or your past, or your previous jobs, or your staff, or whatever it is, we have a great community of people that you can become a part of. Guess what? You pay for the privilege, like everything these days. But we do have an awesome paid program that you could become a part of. And there's a process for you to join that community, and that's why we have a process for you to go through. So if you want to have a chat to Nick and me, this is what you get. We can find out a bit about your business and see if maybe we can, support you to move in a direction that you want to, process some of your stuff, and create a different life for yourself. Jump over on the website, tradiesinbusiness.com.au. You can book a free chat with us. I think we call it a brainstorm or a focus finder. We haven't really decided on what to call it. Basically, it's just catching up with us for 15 minutes, find out a bit about each other and take it from there. So if you'd like to do that, head to the website. And if not, keep listening to the podcast and we'll share some more stuff. We've got some great guests coming up in future episodes. And Nick, thanks for jamming with me today. It's been good.
Thank you, Warwick. I always enjoy a jam.
Preferably on toast.
I like strawberry.
Oh,
Can you remember the tins of jam when you were a kid? The
yes.
IXL tins. Most of our listeners won't have a clue what I'm talking about.
Crazy.
When I was in Hobart for the ladies' retreat, we went to dinner at the old, that was inside the old or part of the old IXL factory. And I've had this hankering for tin plum jam ever since.
Oh my gosh. So much jam. Like, who needs a whole tin of jam?
I don't know.
Now they come in these little tiny jars.
Yeah, they I can't remember them being like they were like a pineapple can tin size.
That's a fair whack of jam.
I know. I always thought it was weird that we had the Glad wrap or the Alfoil on the top. I didn't like it. I only liked it when it was new. But I loved plum jam out of the tin.
Well, the manky bits around the top.
Ugh.
Anyway, no manky bits in the podcast from now on.
None.
Thanks for listening, gang. We'll talk to you next episode.
Hooroo.